Hello guys, welcome to my humble YouTube channel where I bring you fanfiction that will brighten your days. Before we start, a subscribe is greatly appreciated, and don't forget to leave a like and ring the bell icon so you won't miss exciting new fanfiction stories. True God in Another Worlds, Tensura x Tbate, by Tempest_King_20. Chapter 32. New ally Rimuru Pav. I opened gradually my eyes, basking in the warmth of the morning sun peeking through the curtains and the delicate softness of my pillow. It took a few moments for my groggy mind to register that my arms were wrapped around a tender, warm body. As I began to stir, I was suddenly alerted to the sound of murmuring voices, their tones laced with confusion. Before I had a chance to fully open my eyes, I heard Arthur's bewildered voice muttering to himself, "What the heck?" His puzzlement was evident in his tone. "Hey girl." With this sudden realization, I quickly snapped open my eyes, only to be met with the sight of my brother gazing up at me. His blue eyes reflect his perplexity. As I followed his gaze downwards, I saw a little girl snuggled against my chest, her tousled locks of hair cascading down over her face like a veil. It was Seal, and as realization dawned on me, I recalled the events of last night, the confession of our love, the tender moments shared between us. I felt the blood rush to my cheeks in embarrassment, but at this moment, my focus was completely on her. Tenderly squeezing her shoulder with my hand, I whispered, "Seal, wake up." The sound of my voice must have stirred her from her slumber because her eyes fluttered open, and she greeted me with a sleepy smile. "Good morning," she murmured in greeting. "Good morning," I replied, giving her a gentle morning kiss. She blushed a little, but it was a sweet, endearing gesture that I was growing to love. Suddenly, my attention was diverted by the sound of Sylvie, who had just awakened and was staring at us quizzically. "Q?" She tilted her head in confusion and looked around before spotting Seal. "Mama Seal!" she exclaimed in excitement, and both Arthur and I were taken back by her sudden outburst. "Wait a minute. So, this is your partner, Seal?" Arthur asked in surprise as he leaned in closer to observe her better. "Yes, she is," I replied, smiling at Seal, who was blushing. "But when did you guys meet each other?" I inquired, looking directly at Seal as she began to caress Sylvie. "We've known each other for a while," Seal said with a small smile. "When she was with Sylvia, I played with her a little." "And why didn't you think to tell me that?" I asked, and she shrugged with a smile as she hugged Sylvie. So why was she sleeping with you?" Arthur questioned, getting ready for the day. "Well, we confessed to each other yesterday and spent the night talking and cuddling," I replied, feeling a little embarrassed. Arthur's face lit up with a mischievous grin. "Oh, my brother is a ladies' man," he teased, playfully. "Seal, Sylvia, and Lilia, anyone else I should know about?" "Shut up," I said, throwing a pillow at his face, but he dodged it and burst out laughing. "TCH, I grumbled, getting up from my bed and walking over to the bathroom to freshen up. "Nice to finally meet you, Arthur. I'm Rimuru's partner, Seal." Seal introduced herself. Arthur nodded. "Oh, right, as you know, I'm Rimuru's brother, Arthur," he said, directing his vision towards Seal. "But why does Seal look so much like you, except for her red eyes and the fact that she looks more feminine?" he questioned, his inquisition evident. Seal offered a small smile in response. "Well, I am his other half, we share the same spirit," she explained to him, her red eyes glowing with a gentle light. I finished putting on my clothes, including a voice-altering mask to maintain some level of anonymity. "Okay, Seal, can you go back to the imaginary space?" I asked, feeling the need to wrap up our conversation. Seal nodded as she gently placed Sylvie on the bed and bid her farewell before disappearing. Draping my cloak over my shoulders, I cast one last glance in the mirror, double-checking my appearance. I wore a black shirt, black pants made of a dense material, a leather belt holding my katana, and glossy black shoes. As for accessories, I wore my dimensional ring on my left index finger, along with the silver ring I had received from Hellstaeus on my ring finger, and the fingerless gloves adorned with 3 green gems embedded on the knuckles I got from my parents. The final touch was dyeing my hair black, since no one else had the same hair color as me, or at least, I hadn't encountered anyone with the same hue yet. I changed my eye color to blue, just in case. Arthur and I had agreed that, during missions involving several people, we would use common swords, and during solo missions, we could use our real equipment. the Don's Ballad and the katana I had obtained from Seal and Sylvie. Unfortunately, I couldn't make a photo of Rimuru, but I will try to make one soon. As we left the room, Sylvie transformed into a black lizard on my head, providing us with a useful disguise. I couldn't help but feel grateful that she could change her form so easily. The timing of her transformation could not have been better. As we approached the door, we saw our parents and the Helsta family gathered together. My dad couldn't help but let out a chuckle as he took in our appearance. "Look at you two, you're already looking like an S-rank adventurer," my dad said, a hint of amusement in his voice, while ruffling our hair. "Trust in Jasmine when things get rough. She may be the youngest, but don't doubt her strength and experience as an adventurer," Father advised as he pulled Art into one last, firm, hug. "Why are brothers and Sylvie leaving?" "No, stay here." My sister was now struck with the realization that we wouldn't be home for a while. She was clutching my waist and refused to let go as she used the weight of her body to anchor me down. "Honey, your brother will be back, okay?" Our mother attempted to console her, but it seemed to fall on deaf ears. No. Stay," my sister demanded. Ellie was not ready to listen to excuses and began shouting with tear-filled eyes. Kneeling down, I wrapped Ellie in my arms, patting her gently on the back. "I promise to come back soon, Ellie," I said, my voice soft with comfort. "And I'll bring you something nice from our adventure, okay?" Ellie sniffled, looking up at me with teary eyes. "Promise?" she asked, her voice trembling with uncertainty. "Promise," I affirmed, planting a kiss on her forehead. Art crouched down beside me, patting her on the head and offering some words of encouragement. "I know you're a big girl now. Can you protect Mom and Dad while we're gone for a bit, Ellie?" he asked, trying to playfully coax a smile out of her. Hick. "I can protect them," she replied in a muffled voice, burying her head into Art's shoulder and clinging onto him. "Atta girl. Your big brothers are going to be gone for a little bit, but we'll be back. I feel a lot better that we have someone strong like my little sister here to protect the house," Art said, ruffling her hair affectionately. "Yes," she seconded eagerly, her eyes filled with a newfound determination, and she looked cute at that moment. One by one, the rest of our family members came up to offer us their goodbyes. Lily gave me a tight hug, whispering, "Stay safe," in my ear. Aunt Tabitha also hugged us tightly, wishing us good luck and telling us to come back with exciting stories to share with her, while Uncle Vincent gave us a high five. Lastly, my father pulled me into a tight embrace, his hands firmly resting on my shoulders as he looked me in the eyes. His voice was serious, yet loving, as he spoke to me. "Rimuru, I know how strong you are," he said, "which is why I want you to prioritize protecting your brother in addition to staying safe." "I will, Dad, I promised." With one last squeeze, our mother also hugged me tightly, whispering words of love and encouragement. "We'll miss you," she said, tears prickling in her eyes. "Don't forget to keep the ring on, okay?" "I won't," I assured her. With one final wave goodbye, Art and I took our first steps outside, walking down the front stairs to where Jasmine had been patiently waiting for us. "We can go." Jasmine turned to Art and me, her excitement palpable. Art gave a nod in response, his blue eyes gleaming with anticipation beneath his mask. "Can I make a quick stop before that?" I inquired, turning towards Jasmine. She tilted her head in confusion, her ruby red eyes studying me curiously. "I need to meet with Director Goodsky first. Would it be all right if you guys go ahead without me?" I explained, hoping she wouldn't mind. "Sure thing. You know where to find us when you're done, but don't be too late," Jasmine replied before turning to the waiting carriage. I nodded, watching the carriage dissolve into the distance before turning and heading towards the academy. Knowing that I needed to remain unnoticed, I activated my illusion magic and began to use Mirage Walk. The spell cost me little effort, and I quickly arrived at the director's office. As I reached the door, I knocked lightly. "Come in." The director's voice called out, prompting me to push the door open and step inside her spacious office. Director Goodsky was seated behind a large oak desk, poring over some papers. She lifted her head as our eyes met, flashing me a warm, grandmotherly smile. Setting the papers aside, she gestured towards the plush couches positioned to either side of the room. I couldn't help but notice the emerald green owl perched on the windowsill by the director's office. "Good to see you again, Director Goodsky." I greeted her, pulling off my mask and returning her smile before taking my place on the couch. Rimuru, I thought we agreed that you would call me Cynthia, she reminded me, pouring out 2 cups of tea and extending one towards me. I see that you're going to register as an adventurer today based on your outfit, Cynthia observed with a twinkle in her eye, scanning me up and down with visible curiosity. Yes, I confirmed, taking a sip of the tea and relishing the pleasant warmth that enveloped my body. Art and I are going to take our rank examination today, I added. I just hope you don't injure any of the other adventurers, Cynthia laughed, her eyes dancing with amusement. I shook my head in agreement. I'm going to keep a low profile. I plan to become a B-rank adventurer at first and only use one element, I replied. Cynthia seemed to understand my intentions, nodding thoughtfully. I see. So why did you come here? There seems to be more pressing matters on your mind, she pointed out, sensing that my visit had not been solely for registering as an adventurer, but that I had a deeper reason for seeking her out. I paused for a moment, gathering my thoughts. Well, I need your help dealing with someone, I said, my tone grave, as I prepare for the long conversation. Cynthia raised an eyebrow in curiosity, clearly intrigued by the gravity of my request. Who might that be? She asked, her expression shifting to one of concern and interest. Agronavritra. Cynthia Goodski-Pav. The mention of Agronavritra's name sent shivers down my spine, causing fear and shock to ripple through my body. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. This was not a name I had expected to hear on this continent, and certainly not from a young child who appeared to be no older than 9 years old. The gravity of the situation was not lost on me as I braced myself for the worst. I leaned forward, my voice barely above a whisper. Where did you hear that name? Rimuru's expression turned serious, his eyes filled with a sense of gravity far beyond his years as he took a deep breath. When Art and I were separated from our family, we stumbled upon a wounded dragon named Sylvia, Sylvie's mother. She had selflessly helped us and worked relentlessly to create a portal that could send us home, he explained, pausing momentarily to gather his thoughts. As he spoke, I couldn't help but notice the sense of gratitude and admiration he had for the dragon. The emotion in his voice made it clear that their time together had a profound impact on him. But one fateful day, while she was in the midst of completing the portal, someone viciously intruded upon us. It was Scythe Caudale Vritra himself. That despicable creature thought he could eliminate her and came to this continent for that very purpose, Rimuru continued, his voice permeated with a mixture of anger and determination. My eyes widened in shock and disbelief. Could it be that the Alacrians were already present on this continent? Countless questions flooded my mind, yet I struggled to find the right words to articulate them. However, one thing became clear to me: Rimuru had spent a significant amount of time with this dragon. I couldn't help but wonder if his knowledge and extraordinary mana manipulation abilities were a result of their time together. I glanced at Sylvie, who was resting in Rimuru's lap. It dawned on me that Rimuru was, in fact, a dragon tamer. And his reference to Scythe Caudale as a rat suggested a personal disdain for the Alacrian scythe. But saying it without fear, the scythes were the strongest warriors in Alacria, all with Vritra blood running through their veins and extreme power at their disposal. Especially the Scythe Caudale, as it is known to be the strongest of the scythes and also the strongest, lesser, in Alcaria. Why are you telling me all this? I asked warily, sensing that something was amiss. Rimuru raised an eyebrow, looking at me as if it were obvious. What do you expect? Unease began to settle within me. I couldn't shake the feeling that Rimuru somehow knew my true identity as an Alacrian spy. Avier, sensing my unease, shared the same concern as he turned towards Rimuru, preparing himself for whatever may come. Mana surged within me as I weighed my options, unsure of what action to take next. But then, something unexpected happened. Sylvie, who had been resting, stirred and hissed threateningly, releasing an intimidating wave of murderous intent towards Avier. In response, Rimuru calmly stepped in, his voice exuding a soothing aura. Calm down, Sylvie. And you too, Wyvern. We've come here to talk, not to engage in combat, he said, effectively pacifying his bond and diffusing the tension in the room. Both Avier and I couldn't help but be astonished by Rimuru's words. How did you know? Avier managed to inquire, his voice laced with surprise. Brushing off the question, Rimuru sensed that now was not the time or place for that conversation. That's not the point of our discussion right now, he firmly stated. I am aware that you are an Alacrian spy, and I've known for quite some time. Moreover, I am aware of your intentions to aid Decathlon in the forthcoming war. Can we work together? My heart sank as I realized that my cover had been blown, but still, I couldn't help but wonder how Rimuru had figured it all out. Can you at least explain how you found out? I asked, hoping for some clarity. Rimuru's eyes flickered with a sense of determination as he began to explain. The dragon who saved us was Sylvia Indrith, the princess of the Indrith clan. Before that bastard attacked us, she had told me about Alacrian and Ephiadus and about the coming war, he said.
Sylvia Indrath. Avir and I were surprised by this. The Indrath clan. Although I do not know much about them, I know that they are the strongest clan and the one that control Ephiodus above any other clan, and their leader, Kejus Indrath, is known to be the strongest of the Asuras, the king of the Asuras. Yes, she was chased by Agrona and ended up here in Decathlon, Rimuru finished, his voice tinged with a sense of urgency. I nodded slowly, trying to gather my thoughts. It seemed that I had underestimated Rimuru's knowledge and connections. If what he said was true, then this changed everything. I felt the curse inside me tingling, but Rimuru seemed to sense it. Rimuru, perceiving my internal conflict, added, I am also aware of your curse, so there's no need to worry. You believed that Decathlon had a few more decades before the true war began, correct? His gaze pierced me, emphasizing the gravity of our situation. I nodded hesitantly, my earlier theory shattered in the wake of Scythe Caudale's sudden appearance. I wondered how Rimuru knew so much, but his piercing gaze told me that this was not the time for questions. How much time do we have to leave? I asked finally, dreading the answer. I'm not sure either, but I expect we will have at worst a decade, Rimuru replied, his expression grave. The realization that the war could happen much sooner than expected hit me like a ton of bricks. All my efforts to strengthen Decathlon could be in vain if the Alacrians struck earlier than expected. This is bad, I murmured, feeling helpless. Rimuru looked at me seriously, his eyes burning with intensity. Right now, without a doubt, war is not in our favor, but we can change this, he said firmly, his tone leaving no room for doubt. So I will say it again. Will you work with me? I was silent for a moment, still reeling from the shock. His words took me by surprise, and I struggled to process them. But his calm demeanor and the way he seemed to have everything under control put me at ease, despite the severity of our situation. He knew something I didn't, and I trusted him to guide me through this crisis. What should I do? I asked, somewhat humbled by his show of knowledge and authority. I was interested by Rimuru's proposal to work together and improve the education system of Decathlon. As he sipped his tea, he began to outline his plan, and I listened intently, eager to hear his suggestions. I think we should work together to improve the education system of Decathlon, Rimuru began, his voice clear and confident. As you know, the current system is quite lacking in many areas, and I believe we could make a real difference if we put our heads together. I leaned forward, interested by his proposal. What do you have in mind? Well, first of all, we need to revamp the teaching staff, Rimuru said, taking a sip of his tea. There are too many old, outdated methods being used, and we need to bring in some new blood to shake things up. I was thinking we could incorporate some adventurers into the staff. They have a unique perspective and could really add something to the mix. I was impressed by his suggestion. Do you have any specific adventurers in mind? He smirked knowingly. Jackson Morgan. I was surprised to hear Rimuru suggest the name of adventurer Jackson, who was known to be one of the strongest adventurers in Sabine and had quite a reputation. Do you know him? Yes, we're quite good friends. If you ask him, I'm sure he'll be glad to help out, Rimuru replied nonchalantly, taking another sip of his tea. Oh, and although I don't know when the war will be, I suspect they will attack the academy first. It would be useful to hire some additional adventurers to strengthen our defenses. He seems indifferent to someone planning to fight a god, Avir commented, his gaze fixated on Rimuru as I gave him a mental nod. You're right, his calmness scares me a bit, I admitted, and he seemed to agree with me. I nodded thoughtfully. That's a good idea. And will you also be defending the academy when the time comes? Of course, Rimuru replied, his eyes shining with conviction. But I'll need a designated position within the academy to make it easier for me to move and eliminate any traitors or spies. And for that, I'll need your help. I understood Rimuru's need for discretion, but I also realized that his sudden appearance within the academy could raise suspicion. But aren't you trying to hide yourself? I asked with a playful smile. Yes, I don't want to attract Agrona's attention just yet, he replied. Then wouldn't it be strange for an unknown person to become so important in the best academy on the continent? I asked, my mind racing with possibilities. Rimuru sighed, clearly frustrated with where this conversation was going. What do you want to say? Become my student, I said, a mischievous smirk on my face. It wouldn't be strange to get a high position if you were my student. And with my endorsement, no one would question your qualifications. Plus, I could teach you a thing or two. Rimuru rolled his eyes, clearly annoyed. You just want to show me off, right? I didn't deny it, a playful glint in my eye. Okay, but with some conditions, he stated matter-of-factly. Such as? I asked. First of all, I want my own personal training room, Rimuru said. I need space to practice my skills and experiment with new techniques. I nodded, understanding the importance of having a dedicated space for training. Of course. What else? Secondly, I want to attend some upper-class classes as well, Rimuru continued. Very well, I said. And what else? Thirdly, I want you to protect my family while I am unable to do so myself, Rimuru said, his voice firm. I looked at him, seeing the seriousness in his eyes. Of course. I'll do everything in my power to keep them safe. Rimuru nodded, satisfied. And finally, I want you to help train Lily and my little sister when I join the academy. They have some potential, and I want to make sure they have the best possible education. That's reasonable. I'd be happy to help. I paused, before adding teasingly, what about Lily? It seems like you two are very close, you seem to care about her a lot. Rimuru shrugged nonchalantly. Lily is my childhood friend, and I will always take care of her. I sighed in my failed attempt to get a reaction from Rimuru. Anyway, I'll definitely do it, I said with a smile. I don't see a problem with that if you're going to be my student. Sorry to disappoint you, but I'm planning to join as a dual elemental augmenter with wind and water, and with that, I'll use a seal to hide my core stage as well, he said. Can't say I'm not disappointed. I wanted to boast you as my little quadra elemental prodigy, but I guess even a dual elemental augmenter is hard to come by. I sighed. Rimuru chuckled. It will have to do. The last thing I want is to attract unwanted attention, he said with a hint of amusement in his voice. Agreed, I replied, feeling a renewed sense of purpose. So can you tell me your whole plan? Rimuru took a sip of his tea before outlining his plan in detail. I couldn't help but feel a growing sense of admiration for his intelligence and strategic mind. Together, we might have a chance at changing the tide of the upcoming war. As I watched Rimuru leave, I couldn't help but let out a heavy sigh. The information he had just revealed was weighing heavily on my mind. I turned to my bond, seeking his input. He was always insightful and wise, and I was sure he would provide me with some much-needed perspective. That's a lot to take in, I said, my tone heavy. What do you make of it? Avier cocked his head thoughtfully before responding. Well, it does seem like a lot to take in. But, I think there's something to be said for the fact that he shared it with us. It shows that he trusts us, and that he sees us as important allies in his plan. I nodded, realizing the truth of Avier's words. Rimuru had been honest and forthcoming with us, despite the potential risks to his plans and goals. It was a sign of trust and respect. What is your take on him, Avier? I asked Avier, still feeling unsure of how to categorize Rimuru. Avier's eyes met mine before turning his gaze to the window. He is a monster, he replied flatly. He knew I was observing when you visited them, and so did his brother. What? Impossible. My eyes widened in surprise. Even me, who was bonded to him, could barely sense Avier's presence. The background ambient mana would have made him nearly invisible to another mage at this distance. How could Rimuru and Arthur have known? He is incredibly skilled and perceptive. I saw him smirk at me as if he was sensing my presence, not to mention that he discovered my true nature. Avier explained, his tone calm but conveying the gravity of the situation. I guess that's obvious, I said, still surprised, not to mention that his bond is an Asura. But that's not all, Avier continued, his voice lowering. The timing of his brother Arthur getting the will is asymptotic to the time of their meeting with the Princess of Indrath. I felt a knot form in my stomach. You don't mean Arthur have the Princess Sylvia will? I asked, my voice barely above a whisper. It's a possibility, Avier said carefully, his tone conveying the gravity of the situation. As I sat there, contemplating Rimuru and his power, I couldn't help but feel a mix of awe and fear. He was like nothing I had ever seen before. His strength was palpable, and even as an 8-year-old child, he radiated a sense of authority and control that made me feel small and insignificant. It was like being in the presence of a god. But with that power came danger. Rimuru's goals were not entirely clear. I couldn't help but wonder what kind of being Rimuru truly was, and what his ultimate plans might be. All I knew was that I was both fascinated and terrified by him. Didn't Rimuru say, Cattle thought he could kill her? I asked Avier, when she remembered what he said. Avenur looked at me for a few moments and seemed to think about it. It's possible that she's still alive, but that's just an assumption. I grimaced, unsure of what to make of the information I had learned. The situation was becoming more complicated by the minute, and I knew that I needed to proceed with caution. At least there's still hope, I murmured, trying to find some semblance of positivity in our conversation. True, Avier replied, his voice calm. It's clear that Rimuru is fighting for Decathan. His strength and intelligence could be a game changer in the war. I nodded in agreement, realizing that Rimuru may be the key to our success.